So this week I'd forgotten just how much I really enjoyed the Roald Dahl books as a kid. Case in point, Danny, Champion of the World. What's up guys, welcome back to Unlimited Reads. My name is Chris and today I'll be doing yet another weekly update as October is just around the corner. So let's start as always with what I've been reading this week, and the first book I finished early on in the week was Blue World by Robert R. McCammon. This was a book of his short works from around 1981 right through to 1988. I did my review of this collection this week on the channel. If you haven't caught that, please give it a watch. I go into a little bit of depth about which stories I liked and why I enjoyed it so much. I really loved Boy's Life, which was the first book of McCammon's I tried at the beginning of the year, and then I quickly followed that up with Swan Song, which I really enjoyed equally as much. And Blue World was no different. It was a brilliant collection of stories, and I wanted to just sample some of McCammon's short works, and I certainly wasn't disappointed. It was fantastic, so be sure to check out my review for that. The next book I started this week was Dean Koontz's latest novel, The Big Dark Sky. Now this is about a deranged individual who is in the middle of writing his manifesto about why the human race should be extinct and the lengths he is going to bring that warped vision to fruition. And there's also a group of characters that are in the process of converging on a remote Montana farmhouse or ranch house in order to battle the evil that is about to be done. Now I'm 100 pages in. I'm finding it's very slow to get going, and I got a little bit distracted, and on a whim on the weekend I actually managed to pick up a copy of Danny, Champion of the World by Roald Dahl, the very much loved author of children's books. And this is the 1994 edition paperback with the illustrations by Quentin Blake. Now the cover that I remember as a kid, and I hadn't read this book since about 1985, but the original cover by Penguin that you can see now is the cover that myself and a lot of people from my generation will recognise as the book that was floating around the schools at the time. What I like about the original book is that the illustrations are done by Jill Bennett, which the artwork was fairly rich and fairly detailed in comparison to Quentin Blake's work, and I think Quentin Blake started as the illustrator of Roald Dahl's work 3 years later in 1978, I believe. And although Quentin Blake's illustrations are okay, I'm just not a fan of his style, unfortunately. I much prefer Jill Bennett's illustrations myself. But, you know, that said, let's talk about the story. And this book has been out for a long time, so there are going to be spoilers with what I'm going to talk about in a moment. So, the folk who live in the village, for years and years, a few of them have been poaching pheasants from the property of Mr. Hazel, who is the resident rich fat cat, who every year he invites all his rich friends onto his property to go out and shoot the pheasants. And he's just an absolute pig of a man, basically. So the main methods of poaching the pheasant are not what you think. The village folk use raisins, and they used to sew in a horsehair, and they used to feed it to the pheasants, and once the pheasants have eaten the raisin with the horsehair, they would just stand still and you could just pick them up. The other method was making a paper cone and burying it in the ground with a raisin in the bottom, so that the pheasants would come along and peck at the raisin in the paper cone, but the paper cone would have glue on it, and the pheasants would come out with the cone stuck on their head, and because their eyes are covered they wouldn't do anything, and again it makes it easier for them to be poached. But it's not until Danny comes along which he actually devises a method which is brilliant and hadn't been thought of before. Because his father broke his ankle falling into a pit, the medication that he gets from the doctor, Danny thinks, well, why don't we just put a little bit of this sleeping powder in the raisins, and then what happens is the pheasants eat the raisins and they fall out of their roosting perches, and you just come along and pick them up. It's like fishing for dynamite. So it's absolutely ingenious on how the pheasants are poached. The whole story was very, very satisfying. Mr. Hazel at the end has a completely ungraceful exit, which is well deserved, and in the end the few townsfolk that were involved in the covert operation of poaching the pheasants this way get to enjoy their roast pheasant at the end. So it was just a really good fun story, basically. And it's only 200 pages, and I mowed through it in 2 sittings, and it was a welcome distraction. But I am getting back into The Big Dark Sky now, and hope to finish that early next week. So what am I going to read next week? So I've got 2 choices really that I've narrowed it down to. I'm either going to read Double or Nothing by Kim Sherwood, who is the new author selected by the Fleming estate to write a trilogy of James Bond books set in the James Bond universe, so I'm looking forward to that. Or I've got Lightning by Dean Koontz, which is my favourite Dean Koontz book of all time. I just love this one. It'll be my 3rd or 4th time reading it, and it was one of the books that I put out on a video at the start of the week, which was included in my most anticipated future rereads. I'm chomping at the bit to get into it. My reading stack is going down a little bit, so I'm going to squeeze it in and hopefully finish that before the end of the month. And I'll also be reviewing that book on the channel as well, and of course it'll be spoiler free for anyone who hasn't read Lightning yet. So I'm really looking forward to it, and I think I've already made up my mind on which one I'm going with, but I'll be sure to update you all next week on how I went. And what have I been watching this week? Well, I only watched one movie really, and this week I went back to 1995 and watched Casino for the 7th time, I would imagine, starring Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci and Sharon Stone. This has everything. It has gangsters, it has violence, it has gunfights, it has profanity, it has drug use, all the good stuff, right? It's 3 hours long and it's thoroughly entertaining. I like when Joe Pesci's character goes the guy with the pen. It's pretty over the top. I mean, he just lays into him, and yeah, it makes you laugh. It's that ridiculous. But if you like Martin Scorsese movies and you haven't seen Casino, I would recommend having a look. It is very, very entertaining, and I believe it's one of my favourite Robert De Niro roles ever. Yeah, I can't speak highly enough of it. So that was my week, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and as always, offer any comments below and I'll always respond to those, and always up for a chat. But until next time, see you later.